Hi folks, 93. Considering the fact that I've been using Gematria and playing around with the numbers in Twin Peaks, I thought it would be time to take a stab at those coordinates that we find at the end of Season 3. In previous videos, I have highlighted that Lynch and Frost use Gematria. That is, they use a special number system to push subplots in the show. If we analyze those numbers, we can shed light on the subtext of the show to solve some of the riddles in Twin Peaks. In Gematria, you turn letters into numbers. And if those numbers match with other words that sum to the same number, we call that a collision. So if the devil equals 666, and maybe there's a license plate that says 666 on it, or another word like the mark of the beast equals 666, then we would say that those have a relationship with each other. Here we see Laura matching with the word Bob, because they both add up to the same system. The hypothesis here is that there's some sort of esoteric relationship between Laura and Bob. You know, because Bob kills Laura. I have a 1 hour long video going through a lot of these collisions on my channel more generally in the show. There's a few interesting collisions, like how the name Laura Palmer equals her address, 708. Additionally, I have a GitHub that has a lookup table for all of those collisions, so if you want to hit Command F to find your favorite word or character, and then relate that with whatever number that comes up from that dictionary, that's possible as well. Or if you want to enter your own words, you just enter it into the Python that's also in the GitHub. If you don't know how to do that, I will be making an online calculator in the near future. Anyway, that's just some housekeeping. We can get back to the coordinates. So, based on a Genius Redditor's post, we can now know the good coordinates. I'll put a link in the description for further reading as to why they are the good coordinates, but take my word for it, here they are. 4853-37-117-55-22. What we need to know for today's attempt to solve these is that there's multiple Gematria systems, and that the lore behind each of them is a little bit different, which are aligned with the plot points in the show, by the way. By the end of Season 3, it becomes clear Babylon, a divine feminine, is ushering in a new age. In light of a crucifixion that you might have heard of, Laura being murdered. That entity is likely Judy in the show, but hey, watch my other videos if you want to know more about that. And the latest and greatest Gematria system to reflect this new aeon is a system called Trigrammaton English Gematria, or TEG. This is in contrast to the old form that was used in Season 1 and 2 of Twin Peaks, which is a standard English Gematria. TEQ is a big deal in Thelemic circles. I won't bore you with all the details, but basically, Lynch didn't exactly invent Gematria riddles. This guy, Crowley, made a ton as well, and those have been solved with this Gematria system. Basically, if it's good enough for Crowley, it's probably good enough for Lynch. And so whoever cracks this Crowley one, or whoever did crack this, which by the way was a guy named Leo Gillis, he's Jack White's older brother, Jack White being one half of the band The White Stripes. They made that song Seven Nation Army that was popular 2 decades ago. Anyway, he wrote a book called The Book of Mutations. This is an insane read based on Taoist divination, and Thelema. As a matter of fact, I'm learning this math animation software to one day fully explain it, so just stay tuned for that. I have a teaser at the end. And the reason I want to use this system is because they actually yield words from the show based on these coordinate values. If we look up words that match these numbers, we get a weird pattern. It goes Carrie, as in the name of the new Laura in the last episode, Cooper, and then Mr. C. Following that, it's the line, "What year is this?" horse, and then log. Alternatively, you could replace Carrie and "What year is this?" with Lynch and Mark Frost, and I guess log could also be replaced with the word witch, although there's not a strong reason to replace that word, log, with witch. Draw whatever lines you want from these collisions. What happens next is of more interest to me. If we subtract the two sets of numbers, that is that dash 117, that dash is now treated as a subtraction operator, we get the number 56. Now, in Thelema, this is a really big deal. In Twin Peaks, it necessarily isn't, unless I'm missing something. but it further pushes a narrative that Thelema and Twin Peaks are sort of one and the same, or at least Mark Frost is a Thelemite or a Freemason, is sort of that category of spirituality. The briefest explainer as to why the number 56 is important to Thelema is that 56 is quoted in the Book of the Law, which is sort of like the Book of Mormon for Thelemites. So, quote, I am Nui, my word is 6 and 50, so 56. And then it goes on to say, divide, add, multiply, and understand. So, Nui is the ultimate mother. She's the endless night sky in Thelema. The second line are directions for the puzzle, which we will get into. Obviously, this is a puzzle for Thelema, but Lynch and Mark Frost are co-opting it to sort of give a little bit of a hint to do this with the coordinates. Or at least that's a hypothesis. We'll see. 56 in the TEG, that Trigrammatron English Gematria, matches the word cross, where in Thelema the cross represents sort of two opposing forces. So they're both perpendicular lines, therefore opposing, but they are meeting, right? So it's sort of like Good Cooper and Mr. C having an interaction, sort of two opposite reactions colliding with each other. This happens in the show, and in Thelema, the cross is always accompanied with a rose. Now, of course, blue rose is a big sort of head scratcher in the show. So this rose and cross complementing each other in Thelema is probably played with in the show as well. So the Book of the Law says divide, add, multiply, and understand. So let's divide the two sets and see what we get. And then we'll add the sum of those numbers together. And if we do that, we get 137, which if we look up for gematria collisions, all we get is the term blue ape of Thoth, which in another video I hypothesized was the blue monkey that says Judy in Fire Walk With Me. As a Thelemite, this pleases me greatly, but let's keep going because there's other ways to look at this that is a little bit interesting and definitely worth mentioning. For example, you might be saying, hey, maybe we don't literally divide it, but simply separate the sets of numbers and add those up. We get a satisfying answer with that too. So if we go from the center outwards, I guess sort of like an explosion from that middle dash, we get adding 37 with 117, 53 with 55, 48, and 22 finally. If we add all those up, we get three numbers, 154, which is Garland Briggs, 108, which matches Laura Palmer in this system, and 70, which disappointingly only matches the word Packard. I guess Lynch couldn't make it so it would be, for example, a value like Carrie Page, but nothing's perfect, I guess. If you find a TEG word that from Twin Peaks that adds up to 70 that is more interesting than the word Packard, please leave a comment. There's, you could just keep adding words until you find something, I suppose. But right now, that's the only thing I can come up with. Again, this is a first attempt at figuring this out, so stay tuned. There might be a follow-up video. If we multiply those numbers, which perhaps is like saying if we mix all the magic of Garland Briggs, the feminine mystery Laura Palmer, and the deforestation associated with the Packard sawmill, we get 1,164,240. If we comma delimit that number, that is, we get 1, which, by the way, generally we associate with Laura as the number 1 because the Log Lady quote, Laura is the one, that is sort of in a advertising material for the rebroadcast of either season 1 or 2. But also the population shown on the city sign, there's that extra 1 on it, and the idea is, when Laura dies, that 1 goes to 0. It's just a little Easter egg thing that you see every episode. The 164 matches the gematria of Mrs. Tremont, so that, we're still dividing that million-something number. The 164 is Mrs. Tremont, and 240 matches the Hebrew gematria of Odessa, the city in the final episode. So if we were taking this sum that we've just multiplied and sort of seeing like what the coordinates would lead to, we'd have Laura, right, the 1. We'd have Mrs. Tremont, which does happen in the final episode, and then Odessa in a Hebrew formulation If we take that same formula for addition and turn it into subtraction, we get -80, -2, and +26. That gives us Novak, which is Sarah Palmer's maiden name, the letter C, which I assume is Cooper, either like evil or otherwise, and the word woe. The word woe is an odd one. The short arm guy from the Black Lodge says whoa, Bob whoa, before saying fire walk with me, which triggers a ball of fire at the end of season 2. It's also mom upside down, but I'm not sure about this one. But it oddly fits, so we can move on and just sort of say, hey, maybe this is worth a different value. We'll just have a follow-up video on if this match could be better fitting. If we add all those numbers up, as if those numbers aren't negative, we get 108, which again matches the word Laura Palmer. Given all of these hits and the fact that we keep running into the word surrounding Laura Palmer, it's as if they really want us to monkey with those coordinates until something sticks. And personally, I think getting the blue epithet is what you're supposed to get, because that's if you take the clue of the Book of the Law literally. You know, you put in a Thelemite method of answering the question, you get a Thelemite answer. So that is interesting. Perhaps if you took a different Gematria method, you'd get a different answer that is matching that theme. I have not looked into that personally, but that is maybe something for you to look into with your personal, favorite Gematria system. Perhaps Hebrew Gematria, just because the Hebrew Gematria system appears to occur in the show often enough. Additionally, the Standard English Gematria, I think that's fair. There's probably a little rabbit hole for you to go down there too, which I won't do, and you can do on your own time, and I haven't spoiled all the puzzles in the show just yet, so you can still have some fun. Now, understand that those are the good coordinates, and the bad ones don't really have any hits at all in the show. Like, trust me, I've tried it every other way. The best I can come up with is the starting DMS numbers are 48 and 117, which match Lynch and Mark Frost, as previously mentioned. So these are bad coordinates, but they're close to the good ones. And so the starting DMS coordinates are similar to the good coordinates. So they're technically still the good coordinates, they're just vague and sort of too broad, these first digits for the different axes on DMS coordinates. So if we subtract those two, 48 and 117, we get 69. Nice, which matches the word log lady, which is, nice. A neat little Easter egg for a misguided investigator. I think the fact that this is the only hit, though, with the bad coordinates is good, because it confirms that the good coordinates, when we do have hits on them, that means that they were intentional. They aren't just me going through thousands of words in the show and, just hand-picking some kind of combination so that I can exercise my confirmation bias and, oh, look at me, I've spun my wheels for months and I found this because I manufactured answers. No. This is intentional. You can get gibberish in lots of different ways. These are sensical. This is coherent, or relatively coherent. And so this is probably intentional with these good coordinates. So that's kind of nice, that I'm not totally nuts here. Okay, so that's it. The coordinates are just a Gematria exercise. It's a really solid invitation for a Gematria exercise. There's lots of those in the show, but this one was quite explicit because it was such a strong plot point in the show. You can sort of imagine Mr. C going through Gematria on his computer and trying to crack these coordinates and figuring out which ones are the good ones. So personally, I think that's sort of the idea there. You can imagine Wyndham Earle doing a similar thing in season 2. It's just one of those things. So yeah, if you want to apply your Gematria system and see if it's valid, if you have any other sort of hypotheses that you want to work on, or polishing my idea, by all means check out my GitHub. You can fiddle around there. You probably know Python if you know Gematria, just because you always have to make your own little calculator. I will be making a TEG online calculator. I have all the Python lined up, and I'll just use a Python to web page converter for that. not impossible. So just stay tuned to that. I'll probably announce it on this channel. But yeah, moving on, we can talk more about the TEG and the Book of Mutations. This won't concern Twin Peaks very much at all. So if you are only here to figure out Judy, I'd just leave now. P.S. Judy in this TEG system matches the word abyss, and you can look that up. But for the Thelemites watching that are more Thelemite than Twin Peaks fan, who want to support my little Twin Peaks Thelema jihad, keep watching if you aren't familiar with the system, or you do know, and just do it that well, whatever. So Leo Gillis is a Detroit-based occultist who notably has developed a system of Gematria that relies heavily on Liber Trigrammaton. For those who don't know, Liber Trigrammaton is a text drawing connections between the creation of the Tree of Life and ordered trigrams. A trigram is a 3-row representation of symbols. In the I Ching, we have a line and a broken line for those trigrams, representing the yang and yin, respectively. Combinations of these lines and broken lines mean different elements, among other things, and typically are used as a form of divination, again. Much like the tarot, just Eastern. What is odd about the Crowley text, however, is that there's an additional dot with these broken lines and unbroken lines. Gillis explains that while yang and yin are opposites, this dot, called Tao, is neutral. Additionally, the numbers these represent are 0, 1, and 2, which, as trigrams, make up numbers up to 27. So you might be asking yourself, hey, even if all those spots were 2, that would only add up to 6, right? We're counting up to 2 for each of these rows. How are we getting 27 out of that? And basically, the answer to that is it's like a binary, like ones and zeros in a computer. I'm not going to bore you with how that works. I'm just going to assume that you know how binary is calculated. Basically, it's units and placements in relation to positions on just in a string. This version is a bit more interesting, though, because it has this graphic element that's aesthetically pleasing, or at least trippy to watch, as I'll demonstrate. So again, the positions matter, and those positions are multiplied by the numbers listed as we see here. And I'll now demonstrate this base 3 system as we're counting up the sort of base 3 positions. So it's not going to be linear. So on the right, we have actual value. That's not going to be incrementing by 1 past 3. So just keep an eye on that, and then keep an eye on the base 3 values. Now, again, the dot is 0, the line is 1, and the broken line is 2, right? Because you have 2 objects there. And yeah, okay, so let's count them up. So was that complicated? Yeah, it was. So after the bottom third, we went from counting 1 at a time to 6 at a time, and then 9 at a time. That's because, again, the system counts each row as the value from the power of 3, or base 3, as I previously mentioned. So let's count from 1 to 7, and hopefully this makes a little bit more sense. Alright, so we just counted to 7 in this weird system, and I just want to say again, super common to not understand this first try. It's just weird to represent numbers this way, like these sort of base 3 Roman numeral things. But they do turn into like these cool shapes, these Plutonian solids, as Gillis mentions, and it does get really trippy, and it's got 4-dimensional stuff included in it. But this is like sort of the sort of pre-reading to it. The first 3 pages of the book are just trying to explain this sort of fundamental idea. And so I think a lot of people are scared away from this book because of that. But hopefully you can replay the video and just kind of see this and internalize it. The system doesn't just count to 7, it goes up to 27 just with these 3 rows. hexagrams, you have much higher values, etc. And so that's sort of worth considering as well, as that the sky's the limit. Again, you should probably be grabbing the book. You can get it legally. I'll leave it at that. Not the kind of YouTube video that's going to tell you how to pirate, but by all means, watch my videos with ad blocker and steal this book. Or you can buy it if you got to write notes or need to hold something in your hand, or do whatever you want, whatever. The thing is, when you add up all these values in Liber Trigrammaton that are shown, and then the Book of the Law, it's in the same system. They both have the same sum. So the sum is 267,696. If you divide that same number with the Mayan calendar, the long count of the Mayan calendar, so like every day, for their long calendar that had that end in 2012, which I'm sure was very spicy to an occultist in 2001, you get 0.143 exactly. So it's not like any repeating decimals or anything like that. And 143 is the Gematria value of the work Trigrammaton, and the title, the Book of the Law. So the word Trigrammaton and the sentence, the Book of the Law, or the title, the Book of the Law, those also add up to 143. So, we're sort of starting to see, hey, maybe this is a important cipher for Crowley's works. The letters for Trigrammaton are as follows, if you want to just take a look at that. Maybe take a screenshot. I don't know. It's in the book. The rows don't really line up. I don't know what's up with that, but yeah, it's there. It's also on my GitHub if you're trying to make a calculator for it. The next section of the book goes on to why these values can be modeled to Platonic solids, as I already said, or in another way of saying they can be perfectly mapped into shapes in ways that are cool and holistic. I encourage you, again, buy the book, or don't. Just something to do these holidays, if you gotta trap yourself in a room and avoid your family. Not projecting anything when I say that. Anyway, you've all been very patient. Thank you very much. I will make a calculator that runs off the browser if you want to play around with that. Thanks for listening, as always. And 93.